My name is Greyson Vanguard Thela, pronoun he, him. I think our struggle with legal gender recognition has been quite a lengthy one. Particularly when you look at the South African context of identity, sexual orientation, agency, and self-determination. For a very long time, South Africa has invested time and effort in a very binary model of identification. This, of course, being male or female, and this, of course, reflects on the national registry within the South African context. But the problem with this particular model is that it's not open for people to self-determinate. It's not open for individuals to affirm themselves as who they are. It's not open to non-binary individuals, trans and gender-diverse persons. And that's why it's very critical for us in our efforts, in our advocacy, particularly with legal gender recognition, that one undergoes a process of self-determinating your identity. And currently, the South African context has not provided that. You find male and female, but however, when you talk about gender identity, it's a continuous spectrum. It's on a continuous it's on a continuous continent. So that's why it's very important for people to self-determinate, because people's lives are on the line. At the end of the day, when we look at the reason why we find ourselves here, we can reflect on laws such as the Immorality Act of 1927, the Immorality Act of 1950, which essentially criminalized LGBTI individualities, and of course criminalized trans and gender diverse persons and that particular identity. So currently, the South African context has shifted, and what's very critical about this is that sex and gender is not the same thing, and therefore our laws and our national registries and our mechanisms that govern society need to be reflective of that particular process. And I'm quite happy to say that yes, we've got Act 49 of 2003, which is the Alteration of Sex Description and Sex Status Act, which is a law, an act that allows for trans and gender diverse persons to undergo legal gender recognition and use the gender marker that they prefer, the gender marker that speaks to their identity. But however, Act 49, in as much as Act 49 is a short-term solution to a very long-term problem, it still has its problems. It still depathologizes the trans identity, it still depathologizes gender identity. And subsequently now, when you access Act 49, you need to, of course, provide letters confirming that indeed you are a trans person and indeed you are undergoing gender-affirming healthcare. Without those two letters, unfortunately, it can really come a long way in terms of legal gender recognition. It's really come a long way in allowing people to self-determinate. But unfortunately, with that being said, there are still issues with self-determination and legal gender recognition and agency. One, this particular model that South Africa will be introducing will not, unfortunately, benefit trans and gender diverse refugees and asylum seekers, for starters. And secondly, there's a whole lot of gatekeeping that happens when it comes to legal gender recognition, particularly for minors or someone that is considered below the age of 16. In this particular case, when you're below the age of 16, you will need consent from a legal guardian or your parents to subsequently change your gender marker so that it speaks to your gender identity. Non-binary and gender non-conforming identities for a very long time has been a contentious topic and a challenge in actualizing and living your day-to-day life in South Africa. As was previously alluded, that for a very long time the system was only made for a male or female, but no one who's gender non-conforming or non-binary. And of course this affects a whole lot of society. We face a whole lot of societal challenges like schooling, like prison, for example, because currently at this particular point in time, prior to the Jane September judgment, you could only go to a male prison or female prison. But no one has ever taken into consideration that there might be identities like non-binary and gender non-conforming who simply don't want to be put in a box that says male or female. So for a very long time, this has been a marginalized group in society where there's no way essentially where you belong in the system and outside of the system. We realize now during COVID-19 that a lot of trans and gender diverse and non-binary individuals were not accessing a SASSA grant because your gender identity at that point in time was contentious. and the system was not built to see diversity in its intersectional form that it comes in. Yes, South Africa is a home to many people, but however, how trans and gender diverse persons who are refugees get treated when they come to South Africa, it's quite appalling. From law enforcement to society, and there's a lot of education that needs to happen. That we find ourselves that at this point in time where privilege and who you are, whether you're South African or not, can decide on whether you get attacked today or you don't. And this is something very important that we need to shine a light on. Our trans and gender diverse refugees and asylum seekers, where their identity is criminalized, where people get killed where they come from. So it's important that we create a home for our fellow Africans in South Africa. I think it's also important that we shine a light on intersex genital mutilation. It's an open secret in Africa, it's an open secret in South Africa, and we need to really challenge these unhelpful practices that really change the lives of intersex bodies. It's okay for people to let people be. You don't need to choose a box. It's not threatening. Being intersex is not life-threatening. You don't have to have surgeries being done without your consent.
Some of the laws and policies that mandate the protection of trans and gender diverse persons include the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa 1996, which entrenches the qualities of equality and dignity. The list also includes, but is not limited to, the Promotion of Equality and Prevention of Unfair Discrimination Act 4 of 2000, the Alteration of Sex Description and Sex Status Act 49 of 2003, the Promotion of Administrative Justice Act 3 of 2000, the Regulations on the Registration of Births and Deaths of 2014, the Birth and Deaths Registration Act 51 of 1992, the Criminal Law, Sexual Offences and Related Matters Amendment Act 32 of 2007, the Identification Act 68 of 1997, and the Refugees Act 130 of 1998, just to name a few. South African law requires medical or surgical treatment to have been undergone or at least started before anyone can apply to change the sex description on one's ID. Transitioning, though, can begin at any point at which an individual elects to do so. There are different ways to approach transitioning: personally, socially, medically, and legally. Transitioning is a complicated process which involves any or all of the gendered aspects of an individual's life. An individual may elect to change the outward presentation of their own gender identity, gendered pronouns, and even name. Different elements such as body image, personality, finances, support, and the attitudes of themselves and others may affect how far an individual goes with their transitioning process. Interviews with key officers from a research study titled Always on the Edge, a preliminary report on the views of members of an SGBV community of practice on the trans experience in university accommodation, found that working in university student relations raised the challenges of balancing comfort, preference, and harm in relation to sexual orientation and gender identity on campuses. These officers reflected on the LGBTQI+ students who were in effect re-victimized and othered in the process of addressing the issue of unsafe spaces within universities. Such reflections by key officers working with students point to a making it up as we go along approach, which exposes the need for more structured processes to be followed when discrimination and harassment arises. Further, there seems to be insufficient focus on prevention of harm before it actually happens, which leads to reactive responses to harm and facilitates an unsafe environment for members of the LGBTQI+ community.
Hi everyone, my name is Grobbler, and I go with the pronouns they, them, and theirs. I'm a third-year education student at the University of Pretoria, and I'm studying to become a teacher because teaching is something I've always had a set path on in life. Right now, in addition to my studies at the University of Pretoria, I'm actively involved in student leadership, and I've served time in the House Education EC, Up and Out EC, Stuku EC, and next year I am going to be the UPSRC cultural representative. So my journey with my gender identity identity started a little bit after my journey with my sexual orientation in high school. I came to terms with the fact that I was gay around grades 8 and 9, although I was still dealing with a lot of internalized homophobia. But once I got to grade 10, I started entering more actively social justice-based spaces on the internet, and I discovered the gender identity non-binary, more specifically agender, and usage of pronouns like they, them. Things like that have made me start to evaluate my gender identity. Of course, during high school, I couldn't actively use those pronouns, and I kind of just pushed it aside and thought, no, this is ridiculous. How can I have such pronouns in a space like this? There's only male and female. I tried to push aside my own identities and beliefs back then to fit in with the norm. However, once I got to the University of Pretoria, I entered a more friendly space to queer people, if I can put it like that. I encountered the society up and out through one of my friends, and spending time there not only made me significantly more comfortable with the fact that, on my sexual orientation. However, later on in my time, I started thinking perhaps I should go back to these pronouns. I should maybe think. And I started experimenting with my pronouns towards the end of 2021 and realized no, I am most comfortable with this. And as of the start of 2022, I was firm in my identity that yes, I am non-binary and my pronouns are they, them. Right now, I'm only really been using these pronouns and identity in UP. At home, I'm not really out. My family still, my fixed family except my brother still thinks I use he, him pronouns. They honestly don't really know what this is, and it's not something I'm really looking to bring to them. So I've only been exposed to this at the University of Pretoria, and I've only really been out about this in the University of Pretoria. However, even in Pretoria, outside of UP, there's already places where I'm seeing problems like this. For example, many accredited accommodations still use gendered binaries when pairing students in rooms or even just registering students. For example, there's only male and female, and because they don't necessarily abide by UP's ethos of accepting non-binary identities, it's not something I can ask them to change because they have no legal obligation to change. Additionally, it's something that I won't be able to change on my ID or any identification because South Africa doesn't recognize non-binary gender identities. So legally speaking, I'm still a male. However, that's something I do want to change in the future because I know I'm not. Within the university grounds, I'm happy that I can still identify with this, even if the university only lets me use the title MX on non-directly official documentation. So I still have quite a few years left in my degree in the University of Pretoria. I'm going to continue my social justice activism for not only anti-racism and gender-based violence, homophobia and queerphobia in general. I also want to expand my leadership and try and develop more students, educate more students, and just help students in any way I can. After I graduate, I intend to work for a few years in school as a teacher because I do want to bring forth great change in the education system, not only in the acceptance of queer people in the schooling system, however, just general improvements in the education system in South Africa. And I'm going to work towards that once I graduate, perhaps become a principal of the school. My friends, a lot of them are very open and understanding. They may not really understand what it means to be non-binary, but they've been respectful of my pronouns and are trying to integrate it into my life. Whenever they refer to me or when they refer to me to other people, for example, they will try and use my pronouns even if they slip up every now and again. Colleagues and fellow student leaders, for some of them, it is quite an intense learning curve. Some people have never been exposed to this in life before, understandably, so it's a bit of a learning curve to go from he or she and to they, them. So I understand it's something that we're all working on achieving together, we're trying to go forward with this together. From the DSA side, they have been very receptive and they've incorporated gender pronoun training into mandatory student leadership training, and something that they also want to expand a bit more on in the future. However, there are still a few challenges I face. For example, the Constitution of Student Governance under my portfolio still uses binary gender terms like he/she, which does not fit for students like me who are neither he or she. However, speaking to the members of DSA staff, they're very receptive and we are working to change this as well. For example, once I officially change my title to also mixed. Quite a few people have been telling me, but you don't look like a mix. And to that I have to say it's not really the responsibility of a non-binary person to look androgynous or to present differently from how they want to. I'm very comfortable presenting how I am. I do understand it comes with some issues that I still look identifiably as a male, and it can cause some confusion, but it's something I'm willing to talk about and to educate on. If someone misgenders for the first time they meet me, it's understandable. I just correct them. I think one of the big issues I have in the university is just the lack of queer representation in leadership. A lot of student leadership structures in this university are very binary gendered.
The film Layers and Voices was inspired by trans and gender diverse persons, as well as the need to recognize the structures that play a role in creating sexual and gender diversity in South Africa. This is in light of the erasure and invisibilization by many institutions, which continues to take place in our society today. Through their personal accounts and expertise, Jay and Greyson Vanguard Thela shared different perspectives and examples of the many ways trans and gender diverse persons can be recognized, respected, accommodated, and supported through these different structures and social institutions such as the family, school, the legal framework, just to name a few. We hope more of these films can be shared to explore more layers to the lives of trans and gender diverse persons.